Hello storytellers, welcome to Bound by Words. If we haven't met yet, my name is Madie. I am a freelance editor and fantasy writer, and today we are talking about how to pick the perfect merchandise for your next book. And before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you ever need to get a hold of me just to talk shop, my Instagram is down below, or if you have any questions about editing, if you need a sample edit or need to book an edit with me, my website is always down below as well. But today's video is going to be separated into three main parts: how to pick which merchandise is, the best idea for you and your book, how to make that merchandise relate to your book better, and then third, how to make it relatable to your readers. So the timestamps for those will be down below, and without further ado, we're just going to jump into it. How do you pick the perfect merchandise for your book? When it comes to choosing the merchandise, I think there's three main things that you have to consider. The first is, how are you going to supply it? The second is, who is going to design it? And the third is, how is this item intended to be used? Now let's dial it back a little bit. The first one, who is going to supply it? The reason this is important is because it would be devastating to come up with the best merchandise idea, whatever it is, and then find out that you either have no way to make it yourself or have to spend a lot of money upfront to get it in. So you really have to think about where you're going to get these items from and how you're going to get them printed or decorated or shipped out. For example, if you don't have a lot of money to put in upfront on merchandise, you can look into a print-on-demand company. There are a lot of them, honestly. Dozens and dozens of print-on-demand companies, I think. Printify and Printful are talked about pretty often, but I would definitely just Google print-on-demand companies. If you have something in mind that you want, like memo pads or cups or something like that, you can always type in print-on-demand and then whatever item you're looking for. The reason I recommend looking into this is because if you're stuck and you don't know exactly what kind of merchandise you want, or you want something creative and original and you just can't think of anything, that'll get the blood moving in your brain and help you, start to plan out and see what something will actually look like, because they do have, digital mock-ups of their images. And then when you create the design digitally, it'll give you a digital mock-up, and then you can order a sample if you like it to see what it's like in person. So it'll give you some ideas just to peruse those catalogs. But also, if you don't plan on mass ordering from a company or making things yourself, it gives you a catalog of things to work with. So it's definitely a great place to start. Now, if you're feeling really creative and you have the money or the machinery like a Cricut, you can always make your merchandise yourself. Those print-on-demand companies have either machines or people who will take the t-shirts and they put the designs on them, or the mugs and the tumblers. Those are things that you can often do with Cricut machines. It's just a matter of, do you have one? Are you able to get one? Do you have the extra time and energy to spend on that? If you do go about making your own book merchandise, I definitely recommend whatever you're making, whatever you choose, look into how to do it well, because you don't want to give subpar quality merchandise. You don't want to have something that's beautiful, like a mug with the most perfect design that the second somebody washes it even by hand, it falls apart. So if you're making those things yourself, make sure you give them lots of test runs and make sure the quality is really where you want it to be. The next thing is, who is going to design it? And the reason this is important when it comes to picking what kind of merchandise is because there are some things that you'll be able to design really easily, and there's some things that might be a little bit more difficult. So just like book covers, you can design your book cover. You don't need to pay anybody to design your book cover, but you probably should, because there are people who are experts at it. The same is true for making merchandise. If you're making bookmarks, or a mug with a quote on it, or maybe you have a notebook that has just a quote on it with fancy font and something on the bottom and the top, then you could probably design that easy, no-brainer. But there are some more intricate things that you can have made for your book that might need an expert touch. For example, one of my favorite book merchandise items that I have is this blanket from Fairy Loot. I absolutely love it. It is just this beautiful pattern. I'll take a picture of it and put it on the screen, but it is a beautiful pattern with one of my all-time favorite quotes, and there are a bunch of things that I like about it, and I'll probably bring it up later when we talk about how to make book merchandise appealing. But you can tell that that was professionally designed. There are a lot of ways to learn how to design things better. You can look at videos free on YouTube, or you can take a Skillshare class, or you can even pay for a class for, basic design. And there's some things to keep in mind, don't make it too busy, make sure it's easy to read, stuff like that. But when it comes to some of the more intricate items, it's almost more worth it to have somebody design it for you. So if you are designing everything yourself, or you don't have the money or the interest in paying somebody to design something, you're gonna have to keep that in mind whenever you're choosing your items. You have to choose items that you'll be comfortable designing, or that you'll be comfortable working with somebody else to design. Number 3, how will it be used? I feel like I shouldn't have had to include this one, but I have gotten some book items that I don't actually use at all because they don't make a whole lot of sense with the way that I use things. So think about your audience and the types of things they do, and then think about how your item will be used. For example, I love like mugs and tumblers and cold cups and stuff like that, but the book subscription box that I get, where I get a lot of my bookish merch, they only ever send out 12-ounce mugs that are relatively short, and I almost never use them. Even though they're beautiful and I love the pattern, they're just really small for mugs for me, so I don't use them. That's sort of like a very mild example. I have some items that I have been given that I love the item, I love the pattern or the design, and I love the book that it's from even, but I will never use it because the design itself wasn't created for the item. For example, I have a tea towel that is really pretty and it is nice and elegant. It has like a quote on it, and then there's some decorations around the quote, but the words go all the way to every single edge, which means there's no way to fold it that it looks reasonable. And usually with tea towels, you like fold them and or drape them over like that handle on your oven, or you know, like some people have like a towel handle in their kitchen. There's really no way to fold and or drape this even just as a decoration towel because of the way the design is. It almost seems like that didn't cross somebody's mind. The only way I'll be able to use this tea towel is if I like hang it on the wall as a decoration, which I've honestly thought about, and that might happen. Another thing that, you know, I love the item and I even kind of liked the pattern and the book it's from is I got pillows, and I'm pretty sure they're from 6 Crimson Cranes, but the pillow itself is white and the design on it is, you know, it's like a little bit Asian and a little majestic, and it's definitely whimsical, and it's all in pastel pinks and purples. I'm not super feminine, I'm not the biggest fan of pink, but I don't really shy away from it like I used to. But there's nowhere in my house I can put these pillows where they don't stand out and look odd, so I don't use them because they look like they were pulled out of like a 4 or 5-year-old girl's bedroom. It's not just that they're pink and purple, it's like the design and how whimsical it is. So it's cute, but for like, I feel like the target audience, there's a very small percent of people in that target audience who can regularly use the item. So when you're picking what items you're using, make sure you're thinking about where you're getting them from, who's going to design them, and how your audience is going to use them, because you don't want to create an item that is, you know, perfect and beautiful, but it ends up either being useless because the item itself is a little bit different than what is most common, or because the pattern on it is something that doesn't match up with the use of the item. So we're going to move on to topic 2 here, and that's how to make it relate to your book. And that's something that I am most excited about to share in this video, that I feel like a lot of people are sort of going to drop their jaw at, is don't make the item, whatever the design is, whatever the item is, don't include hyper-specific information to your book, at least for the majority of your merchandise. Unless you've built your author brand up to a point where you have a big following and, you know, a lot of people in the reading community have read your book, there's a good chance that including hyper-specific information is going to keep your merchandise from being inclusive. So basically, if somebody looks at it, they're not going to understand what it's from or what it means. What I say when I mean this is if you have like t-shirts or keychains that have your main character's name on them, maybe a pretty design, maybe the name of a location. I think there's a little bit of a gray area with locations because that sort of comes as like a little bit of an inside joke. But when you have a really big platform, so think about like J.K. Rowling or Sarah J. Maas, those big names that we know. If we see a t-shirt that says The Night Court and you've read the book and you know what that's a reference to, that's going to start a conversation, and that is awesome. So if you have readers that you know will recognize that merchandise on other people and want to start a conversation, I would definitely recommend it. I also want to tack on to the end of that I would never recommend not doing something just because people will have had to read the book to understand it, because you do want it to relate to your book, but you shouldn't have all of your merchandise be these hyper specific things that readers won't understand unless they read your book and loved it. And there's a few reasons why, and I feel like not a lot of people think about it this way, but just from like a business and marketing point of view, and that's what a lot of merchandise is. Everyone knows that you don't make like a whole lot of money from writing books and publishing, so the goal is really to create several streams of income, and you want your merchandise to be a separate stream of income. You want to sell things that, you know, people who read your book are going to want to check out your merchandise, but also people who check out your merchandise are going to want to check out your book, and they're not going to do that if the merchandise is sort of like exclusive and they don't feel like they're really like drawn into it. I think a great example of this is my wallet. This is my wallet. I get compliments on this wallet all the time, gas stations, like drive-thrus, grocery stores, wherever, people are always like, that's so cute. It's just a little minimalist wallet. The design on it, it's simple and eye-catching, and it's from The Prison Healer. So I always love to tell people that it's from a book, and that's why it has this pretty pattern on it, but you don't have to have had read the book to enjoy this. I get compliments on this from people who don't even read because they look at it and they're like, it's pretty. And then for anybody who does read, whenever I say, oh, it's the design from the cover of The Prison Healer, they might be interested in looking into The Prison Healer, especially if they read and they read fantasy. Now, this is actually kind of funny. I haven't read The Prison Healer. I have a copy of it because it came in a book box, and I love my copy. It's pretty, like, beautiful. And after seeing it a little bit more on social media and having the wallet, it actually moved its way up a lot higher on my TBR. The only reason I haven't read it yet is because I have, like, a TBR list for physical books and audiobooks, and I had a few physical books ahead of this one, but getting this wallet and loving it is the reason that this sort of like made it into my like up next pile. So you want to have at least some of your merchandise where you can really enjoy it without having read the book, and if you include hyper-specific information on all or most of your merchandise, you won't have that. And I know what you're thinking, how do you make book merchandise that relates to your book without including specific information? And the key is include specific information, just don't include information that needs context, I think is a good way to think about it. So a lot of us as writers, when we're writing, we hit those lines where we're like, I really like the way I worded that, that's really dramatic, that could be a quote. I feel like all of us have had that experience where we either just write a line and it just clicks and we like it, or we're going through and we're reviewing it and we're like, that line just has a lot of pressure. I urge you as writers, no matter what stage you are in your drafting journey, if it's the first draft or, you know, you're reading the final proofread of your book before it published, write down those dramatic lines, keep a list of them somewhere, keep it in your Scrivener file, you know, put them on post-it notes and put them on the wall behind your desk because that's kind of inspiring. Use those lines and quotes to either inspire or as part of the designs for your book merchandise. And I'll put that picture of that blanket back on the screen because it has one of my favorite quotes ever on it. It's a pretty design, it's simple. You don't have to have read the book to read that and feel the impact of what that means. So those relatable lines are, I think, a great way to make something relate to your book without being hyper-specific. Another reason that it's important to have a decent amount of merchandise that is not hyper-specific is because if you're a writer and you plan on writing more than one story, then you're not just selling one book. You're selling yourself as a creator and as somebody who like wove that story. So you want somebody to get your merchandise because they either love it and think it's pretty, or they want to support your platform, or they liked your book, but you also want it to be something that when other people look at it, they're like, yes, this author inspired this. And even though I have a bunch of book merchandise things now from both Fairy Loot and then a bunch of other, you know, book subscription companies that I tried throughout the last 2 years where I'd get just a couple boxes at a time, but my favorite thing that I have is actually not from any of those places. It's not my wallet, it's not the cool organizational things or my metal straws. It's actually this t-shirt that I have, and the reason I love it so much is because I get a lot of comments on it, so it creates a lot of positive interaction for me. It is this burnt orange t-shirt that has this pretty design around the outside and a cup of tea, and it says, I sprinkle a little bit of spite in my tea every morning, and it is from Serpent and Dove, one of my favorite books. So think about your author brand whenever you're creating merchandise, and not just your current book or series that you're creating merchandise for. Think about, you know, what colors, think about the font that you use in the front of your book, think about if you have any decorations on like the inside, like chapter decorations. Is there any kind of like culture or like religious like themes in your book? What is the tone of your book? Is it a quippy romance, or is it like a dark fantasy with a lot of drama? Use those elements to enhance your book merchandise. I feel like there are a lot of common things that people really expect to see from authors, like bookmarks are a big thing. Everyone expects to see like bookmarks, and one of the reasons why is because I think they're really easy to like get in bulk, and they're relatively inexpensive, and you can slip them in every copy of your book that you sell. You know, if you're shipping out the ones that you sign, or you can throw it in with other merchandise. My business cards are bookmarks. I highly recommend that because what happens is it's functional, they'll use it and then they'll sneak it somewhere, they'll maybe forget it inside of a book on their shelf, and a year later they'll find it and remember that you exist. So even though it's sort of basic and common, it's definitely something I would recommend. Some other things that are really common are like t-shirts. I know I said mugs earlier. Mugs are common, but I also think that if done well, they stand out in like a really unique and dramatic way. Some other things that I see a lot are like art prints and pencil cases and totes, and they're generally things that every single print-on-demand company like has available, and I think that's why they are so popular. Even though you might want to have some more of those common items, either because they are easy to design and expected, or because, you know, you have a really great creative idea for them. Maybe you just want to see your book cover on like a tote bag, so you want to design a tote bag. That's awesome. I think you should also try to sprinkle in some unique items, and that's one of the reasons why I think print-on-demand companies are great, because you don't have to like shell out a lot of money to have something designed specifically for you. It can be as simple as, you know, if there's a game in your book that is played a lot, you can get colored dye and you can actually make memo pads with whatever background you want. They don't have to be blank with a logo or whatever. You can have whatever you want printed on a memo card, so you can make your own little game board or something like that. You can have, you know, playing cards printed. If you like art prints, which is another really common thing, then have you ever considered having a puzzle made where you can have, you know, your designed art print, the same thing, but in the form of a puzzle where your readers have like a little activity that they can do with it. Those elements of your author brand and also your book mixed together are going to affect what kind of merchandise you want to have. They might affect what you want to have and what you don't want to have, but they might also affect what kind of designs you want to do. For example, if you have a quippy romance story, then it might make sense to do like a blanket with some simple or elegant pattern, or like a quote on it like the one that I showed. If you have some dark and brooding mystery story, it might make sense to do like a big mug, because I feel like you always see pictures of like a big mug with something steaming next to like a window and it's like raining and then like the books are lined up. It has that sort of aesthetic or mood or tone. So use that to your advantage whenever you're picking your merchandise and you're making it related to your book. If your main character is a shut-in, maybe that means you need to design blankets and slippers, and, you know, maybe you have a really pretty design that is simple and elegant that would make a good like front doormat or bathroom rug. If your main character is fit and adventurous, I know print-on-demand companies that have like leggings available, and you can make a really appealing legging design that is fitting to your tone of your story, but will also serve a function for the person shopping. Now we're going to move on to the third section, and that is how to make your merchandise appealing to readers. Book merchandise has two purposes. One purpose is to market your book, so think like art prints or bookmarks or anything that has a design that the sole purpose of it is that it looks pretty and it's related to your book. That is something that is marketing for your book. The second thing is that the item serves a totally separate purpose and you have just decorated it with a pattern that relates to your book. So like my wallet that I showed you, the purpose of this is to hold my cards and my ID and stuff, and it is just decorated with this beautiful book related pattern. And I will tell you that these items that have a separate purpose will always be used more and bought more, and I actively look for more of these. If you ever find items that serve a function and have book print on them, I'm hands down interested. And I feel like this is really common, because if you're creating an item that doesn't have a purpose, it's either like going to be decoration or junk. And that's sort of hard to say, but the purpose of this video is to help you create the best book merchandise you can, so you have to keep that in mind. Somebody might love your book or the artwork on your item, and they might want to hang up that art print, and that is wonderful, but you'll have people who have never read your book before, and you might even have people who aren't even readers who want things that look pretty and also serve another purpose. For example, I had like an Under the Sea book box that I had gotten that had metal straws in it, and I love that. They're reusable. Honestly, they're kind of really popular right now, and they're this pretty blue ocean color. I also recently got this like fabric pop-up tote. It's just square and it's like this big and it's a box. And it's fabric with wire on the top, and it pops open, and it's about the width of a book, so I can stack books up on it if I want to put it in like my book cart or something. Right now I have some other book related trinkets in it, but it's something that is simple and unique. It serves a purpose, so I am using it, and it is decorated with a pretty book design. And that item, even though I am regularly using it to store things on my bookshelf right now, I have never read the book it was inspired by, and it's one of the prettiest things that I have. A great thing to ask yourself is, if somebody didn't read, would they still be interested in purchasing and or using this item? And the reason why that is so important when it comes to designing some of your book merchandise, if not all of it, is because even though your book is going to sell the merchandise and you're going to market the merchandise, somebody's going to read your book and they're going to say, I want the t-shirt, I want the tote, I love this so much, I want it to be on my phone case. They might think that, and that's awesome. Your merchandise is also going to sell your book. just like the wallet for the book I have never read that I use every day and I have been for months, just like my blanket that I love that I get comments on. It's like the blanket I bring when I travel, and everyone's like, that's really pretty and that quote's really dramatic, and I love it. So the merchandise that you make that is interesting and intriguing, that has non-hyper specific information, is going to draw people in to your brand and your book, just like any other kind of advertising would. So before I wrap it up, I actually went and got that fabric tote because I wanted to show you some of my favorite book items and why they're unique and I think would sell really well, even though I got them in book boxes, so I didn't pick most of them out, but they definitely inspired, I think, a lot of book merchandise that I've helped people create. I leave the tags on things sometimes because I like to know where they came from, so don't judge me for that. But I had it sitting like this on my shelf, and it just has this pretty, like, star pattern, which just fits the rest of the decorations everywhere anyway. But you can do trinket dishes or coaster sets. Those are relatively easy to make, just sets of 4 coasters. Writers and readers alike use those. I always have one on my desk. The ones I have now, they're actually inspired from Avatar, and I change whichever one I use based on whatever lights that I put behind my desk, so I think that's kind of fun. Fairy lights in different shapes, so these are heart fairy lights. I think the month that these came from, the theme was like Heartstopper. So if you have a theme where you can use a basic symbol like that, something like this might work. Another thing that I didn't expect to love, but I certainly did, was hair scrunchies. I know they were just pretty popular with the younger crowd. I use hairbands a lot, so it's just a fun little, I use them anyway thing that I can incorporate books into my normal life. This one actually has daggers and roses on it, and this one says, "You're an absolutely stunning, murderous little creature," over and over again on it. So I just think it's funny because people are like, oh, that's a cute little hair scrunchie, and I'm like, it's actually a murderous fantasy reference that a lot of people don't get. And I know I mentioned puzzles earlier. This is one of the 2 puzzles that I got that I really liked. It has this really pretty artwork on it, and you see the artist tag is down below. Almost everything that I have gotten from book boxes or websites, it always has an Instagram handle on it because, you know, that's the social media platform for marketing things that are pretty. But that's just a great place to go to find people to design book merchandise for you. They'll have a lot of pictures, so you can pick what kind of art style you like. You can pick what kind of colors and, you know, dimensions that you need for your book. Book sleeves. I can tell you right now that when I got my first book sleeve, I absolutely needed more. I couldn't get enough, and I couldn't find patterns that I liked. So this is from the Atlas 6, and it says, "Knowledge is carnage. You can't have it without sacrifice." I'm actually reading this book right now, and I really like it. There are a couple ways to get book sleeves. This one has like a slippery material on the outside, but it's fuzzy on the inside, and I think that's probably the best for books, but I actually think I like them more when it's like a fabric texture on the outside. I don't know why, but this is like nice and waterproof, so I actually carry my iPad around in one of these, and then whenever I am doing any kind of like writing and development or studying with a book that's smaller, I'll put the book in with a notebook and like a pencil. So right now I'm reading The Plot Thickens, is like the book that I'm reading just to improve my own writing, and there's enough space in here for a notebook or a memo pad in that book. If you're somebody who likes to annotate or take notes, you know, a book and your post-it notes or highlighters or whatever, these are definitely purpose things that I think make for great book merchandise. And if you're not a reader and you make a pattern that is pretty, students and other people are going to use it as well. So if you are inspired by any part of this video to either look at book merchandise, start creating your own, or even just shop for some, make sure you give this a thumbs up. Again, if you need sample edits or you need to get a hold of me, my Instagram and website are always down below. Please consider subscribing. I post writing related videos twice a week. And with that, have a great rest of your day.